If you're building green in Lorwyn Eclipsed Limited, this is the video for you. Hi, I'm Michael from Michael the Gathering. If you've opened up a lovely sapling nursery and you really want to put that affinity for forests line of text to actually good use, then this is the video for you. Green is a little bit of an exception compared to the rest of the colors in Lorwyn Eclipsed Limited. Every color has two color pairings that are tribally supported and two color pairings that are not tribally supported, but are instead mechanically supported in some way. Every color pairing has something to do in Lorwyn Eclipsed Limited, whether or not WotC is actually acknowledging them out loud. But in the case of green, the way that things shake out is a little bit less like two tribal decks and two non-tribal decks, and more like two tribal decks and one 3-color deck that's based on having lots of different colors in the deck that you can pilot one of two ways, depending on the cards that flow to you in draft. As the relatively straightforward decks, we'll get the tribal ones out of the way first. Green-white is the color combination of Kithkin in green. This is one of the most straightforward decks in the entire format, and also one of the better ones as a result. As a supported color pairing, green-white gets a multicolor draft. Signpost uncommon in Thoughtweft Lieutenant. This is a 2-mana 2/2 with whenever this creature or another Kithkin enters, you get to put +1/+1 somewhere. So this thing is going to beat down incredibly quickly. It's not a once per turn effect and is just astonishingly powerful if you can get a deck of nothing but Kithkin or at the very least changelings. Every color gets a pair of hybrid enablers. As a supported color pairing, green-white gets Eclipsed Kithkin, a 2-mana 2/1 for Gwa. No, we're not doing that one. We're swapping these ones around. Wug, which is 2 white or green hybrid mana, which on entering digs for a Kithkin, a Plains, or a Forest, which is it's less surprising than the other Eclipse cards on account of the fact that both green and white are allowed to have 2-mana creatures that on entering just draw a card anyway. And that common white-green gets Wary Farmer, a 3-mana 3/3 for 1 Wug that has at the beginning of your end step, if another creature entered the battlefield this turn, i.e. you are playing your deck correctly, Surveil 1. This deck isn't going to be using the fact that surveilling is putting stuff into your graveyard as often as you would like, but it's not going to be using it. If you get the odd loose elf card that happens to have just landed in your deck, this is going to matter, but most of the time this is functionally just scrying. The card you really want to look out for if you've landed in this deck is Kinsbale Aspirant. This is a white 1-mana 2/1 Kithkin with whenever another creature you control enters, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Again, not once per turn. This card is absolutely incredible, and casting one of these turn 1 off beholding another copy of it in your hand is going to cause some arena opponents to scoop on the spot. I said it in my white video and I'll say it again here. If I'm playing pick 2 draft and I open a booster pack that has 2 Kinsbale Aspirants in it, I'm probably going to pick them over most of the rares in this format. Tribal importance also ups the value of a lot of other common fair creatures in this deck. Crossroads Watcher is a 3-mana 3/3 with trample, and whenever another creature you control enters, it gets +1/+0. Just a nice, pretty aggressive creature that will put some pressure down, but isn't going to blow anybody out of the water, except for the fact that it's a Kithkin and is going to relevantly trigger all of the things that you need it to trigger. And finally, if you're in white-green from a particularly open green lane, you're hopefully going to see extra copies of Mist Meadow Council. This is a 5-mana 4/3 with when it enters draw a card, but it costs 1 less if you already control a Kithkin. Now, obviously, if you're playing this card, hopefully you're playing it in a deck where having a Kithkin on the board is a thing that you're always going to do unless you have recently been wrathed. I don't even know if there's a Wrath in this format. The other tribal deck in green is Green-Black Elves. This tribal deck works a little bit differently to Kithkin. Morecast Loyalist, sure, looks like a normal tribal lord. This is a 3/2 for 1, a black and a green with other elves you control get +1/+1. But more importantly, it has, when it dies, return another elf from your graveyard to your hand. So if you have 2 Morecast Loyalists, you can just flip them back and forth from your graveyard forever without ever meaningfully spending any of your rectangles. As a supported color pairing, it gets the hybrid enabler Eclipsed Elf, a 3/2 for Bug that lets you dig for elves, forests, or swamps. Just an absolutely fantastic card, which I would probably honestly play in even some non-elf decks. But the highlight of the deck is Stoic Grove Guide. The common hybrid enabler for black-green is a 5/4 for 4 and a bug that you're not ever actually going to want to play from your hand because it has 1 and a bug, exile it from your graveyard, make a 2/2, making this a 2-mana 2/2 that you never actually have to spend a rectangle on, which is just really, really good if you can discard it to an Iron Shield Elf or mill it off the top. These are effects you're going to be very happy to activate and generally find in that Iron Shield Elf is a solid 2-mana 3/1 in black with discard a card, this creature gains indestructible until end of turn. A perfect use for your Stoic Grove Guides that have gotten marooned in your hand. But hopefully if you have sufficient copies of Scarblade Scout, a 2-mana 2/2 lifelinker in black, you won't ever need to actually see them because on entering it also mills you for 2. This is the foundational core of the black-green elves deck. Solid creatures that come down on curve and are also filling your graveyard with cards that will eventually be treated as cards essentially in your hand. Finally, if you're drafting black-green from a very open green lane, hopefully you can get multiple copies of Lys Alana Informant. This is a really, really solid card. It's the other 2-mana 3/1 in the deck with when it enters or dies, Surveil 1. This effect is becoming relatively common in draft formats nowadays, but it is really, really good here, being both tribally relevant to the deck and the deck really wanting to surveil specific cards into the graveyard. Now, red-green and blue-green are a pair of decks that have a bit of a weird relationship. I'm going to start with red-green because it's got the most distinct stuff to do. Red-green is the color pairing of giants, not that WotC would ever tell you that, but you're going to get cards like Boldweir Aggressor, a 5-mana 2/5 with double strike, and other giants you control have double strike, which makes the red-green common hybrid enabler actually make sense. Gangly Stompling is a 4/2 trampling changeling for 2 and a rug, that's a red-green hybrid mana, that is aggressively mid unless you are playing it with a Boldweir Aggressor, at which point it is a 4/2 trampling double striker, which seems pretty good. Similarly, Pummeler for Hire is a 4/4 Vigilance Reach Ward 2 for 5 mana that when it enters you gain X life, where X is the greatest power among giants you control, which is almost always going to be 4 just off this creature entering the battlefield. You can play this card entirely by itself and it'll be 99% as good as if you played it in a straight giants deck. But when we come out of the giants part of red-green, we transition into the part of it that is a lot more fuzzy in which colors it's meant to be in. If you're drafting in a very open green lane, hopefully you can pick up copies of Wildvine Pummeler. This is a huge, efficient giant, a 6/5 reach trample for a starting value of 7 if you have nothing on your board except lands, but is extremely reliably castable for 5 mana off any 2-colored permanent on the board. For example, the red-green hybrid uncommon enabler, Noggle Robber, which is quite notably not a giant, which feels like an intentional slap in the face to the Giants players to me, but what would I know about designing? I'm just a person on the internet. This is a 3/3 for 1 rug with when it enters or dies, create a treasure token. Just a really solid card. I love a net 2-mana 3/3 on my turn 3. But despite Wildvine Pummeler being tribally a giant and Noggle Robber explicitly being red and green, both of these cards are not necessarily best in a red-green only deck. They are in fact best if you transition them into our next deck, which is green-blue. Side note, green-blue players, I'm sorry for once again featuring your deck last in the massive list of all of the different color pairings. Sometimes you just gotta. Green-blue isn't a tribal pairing, and in fact specifically gets the most nonsensical creature typings in its color pair, starting with the uncommon hybrid enabler, Glisterban. I really hope that I'm saying that correctly. This is a 1/4 for 2 ugh, that is blue-green hybrid mana, which at the beginning of combat on your turn hands out a minimum of +2/+2 to another creature, which gets pretty solid. Like, this is a really solid aggressive piece despite never needing to attack itself, and if you can get this all the way up to +5/+5 per turn, you're going to start annihilating players pretty fast. The best way to do that, rather than playing, say, specifically green-blue cards, is to bridge the gap over into red-green and pick up copies of Noggle Robber. Yes, you are going to want to occasionally play the green-blue common hybrid enabler chitinous graspling. It's a giant spider. It's a 4-mana 3/4 changeling with reach that's going to keep you alive, sure. But the fact that this is a changeling is maybe the least relevant out of all of the changeling hybrid commons. I would certainly pick Noggle Robber over it, even in an explicitly green-blue deck. Because whether or not your green-blue deck works really does entirely hinge upon getting Vivid up to and beyond at least 3. Prisma Basher is a solid 6-mana 6/6 trampler. If you have to just play it onto an empty board, it will threaten to end the game quite quickly. But if you can have this enter and give +3/+3 to 3 creatures, you're going to start alpha striking people. And this Bear Elemental is going to start giving people Glacier Godmore flashbacks. And yet more egregiously, we have the new Muldrifter. Shine Striker is a 6-mana 3/3 flying with, when it enters, draw cards equal to Vivid. This being, at its base level, a 6-mana 3/3 flying draw a card is kind of bad. Like, I wouldn't play this in most decks, but the fact that with just a smidgen of effort, this becomes a 6-mana 3/3 flying draw 3 cards, suddenly we're getting into Imperial Oath territory. And finally, if you're drafting green-blue from a very green open lane, please, for the love of God, pick up as many copies of Great Forest Druid as you possibly can. This is one of the only solid multicolor fixing options in the format. Yes, there is a Manalith, but it's a changeling rather than a thing that sets its own color. And Great Forest Druid is just a really solid defensive 0/4 that is going to keep you alive until you can resolve all of your giant 6/6s. That's all for green. Thank you for the patience. Thank you for watching through all of these videos. I'm so sorry for what my webcam did to my first attempt at filming these last 3 videos. I hope to get these up as soon as humanly possible. Please leave a like and subscribe for appreciation. Leave a comment down below if these videos helped you out. I hope that they can at least help you with your pre-release weekend, even if they're not coming out on your earliest possible pre-release, and that they will hopefully not be completely incorrect for all of your ECL drafts, which will last us all the way until March.